Keith, there's a lot of discussion about company values and value statements, but you draw a little different distinction here between company values and company character. Could you talk about that distinction and what makes it important?
Sure. We've read all the business books that everybody else has read, and I've read about the importance of values, and we would not dispute the importance of values. But a funny thing happened in our interviews is we would start every interview kind of talking about, tell us about your company, and we always had a question in there about, tell us about your company values. You have a company value statement. And we noticed that people's eyes would kind of glaze over, and they'd kind of, their energy levels would go down. And some of them would say, oh yeah, some consultant came in here and we have this value statement and I've got it here somewhere. And then we would ask another question, that's, you've built a great company here. What makes your company so great? And people would sit up in their chair and they would get energized, and they would talk about the things their companies are doing in people's lives, the employees' lives, the customers' lives, and it was a completely different kind of set of issues. And one of the things we realized was that for people, they were less interested in what the company said its values were, and they were less interested in consulting engagements around the issue of values. But what they really connected with was when a company said it was something and delivered on that promise. And we began to see a difference between a set of values, which is what you purport to believe, and what we called company character, which is the act of lining up what you say you believe with how things really happen in that company. And we think what made these companies unique, some of them had value statements and others didn't, but they all, when we asked the question, what makes your company so great, they all began to talk in a very animated fashion about a company that walks the walk, that basically does what it says it's going to do, a company that connects what it says it believes with how it really acts. There's no more important subject in this area of character of kind of people. And so one of the things that, we had read all the books about, you get great people, have a great company. Mm-hmm. And so we were kind of curious about this. So one of my first interviews was at Polaris, and I asked this Polaris executive, I said, we all know that the secret to having a great company is to have great people. And so are you willing to share with me and my readers the special techniques that Polaris has used to attract the best and the brightest from your industry? And the guy looked at me like I was from Mars. And when you're nervous and you're doing an interview, one of your early interviews for a book, you just repeat the question. He still looked at me like I was from Mars, and he looked at me and he finally said, we don't have anything like that. And I looked at my research assistant and he looked at me. He says, oh, you're putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. That's what the guy from Polaris said. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, have you ever been to Roseau, Minnesota? And I said, no. He says, well, you have to go to Roseau. You won't understand Polaris till you go to Roseau, because today they're headquartered in Minneapolis. That's where I was meeting with this guy. And I said, well, how far is Roseau? He says, it's a 6-hour drive from here due north. It was the middle of February, terrible time to be in Minnesota. He says, but I don't want to talk to you again until you go to Roseau, because that's really where you can understand Polaris. Well, if you ever go to Roseau, you'll know what he's talking about, because Roseau, Minnesota is a mud hole on the border of U.S. and Canada. I was there a few months ago. It was 40 below zero. They set a new record for the coldest recorded temperature in the lower 48. And it's not the kind of place we all dream of going. And what this guy was telling me was, hey, we had to find people who would move to Roseau in the early years. And what I realized is, well, one of two things is true. Number one, people who live in Roseau, Minnesota are genetically superior to everybody else, which I think is unlikely, no offense to those folks in Roseau. Or two, they had figured out a way to take the people they could get to move to Roseau and build a great organization around them. And later, when I visited Fastenal, one of our other companies, I'll never forget, I was sitting with the founder, Bob Curlin. And I said, Bob, what makes Fastenal so special? And he said these words to me. He said, you know what? We've just tried to build a place where ordinary people could do extraordinary things. And I thought that really captures this theme that we've seen across these companies. Is they've learned, these companies have learned, it's not just about getting the right people, it's about getting the people right.
It's amazing. So you talked about the company characters being as individual as thumbprints.
Yeah.
What were some of the interesting company characters you ran across?
Well, I mean, they're just as different as you can imagine. You can imagine what a culture built by Roger Staubach is like, right? I think it's probably like an NFL team. I mean, it's a macho environment. These guys are really aggressive. To be in the commercial real estate business, you've got to be people who are just willing to do whatever it takes to win the deal. And just it kind of feels like a college frat house a bit. And then you can imagine at SAS Institute, founded by Jim Goodnight, he was a PhD in mathematics before he started SAS. A bunch of software people, a lot of PhDs. And so these companies each had their own little environment, their own kind of take on the world, but they all cultivated character above all, and that's what struck us.